Good evening and welcome to the City Council meeting for Monday, April 7th, 2025. Roll call, please.
Adams.
Here.
Blendy. Brownfield.
Here.
Butler.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
McIntyre.
Here.
Smith. And Stevens.
Here.
As we rise to the Pledge of Allegiance, we'll ask for a moment of silence for Bill and Brad Parrott, the father and grandfather that were killed, headed to Tennessee to watch their daughter and granddaughter play softball. A very tragic event, and if we could, we'll have a moment of silence. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First, a proclamation to celebrate Arbor Day. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, I am not getting ahead of myself, am I? No, I'm not. Okay. Audience comments is after this, so wanted to make sure. Set aside for planting trees, and whereas the holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of the precise topsoil by wind and water, cutting heating and cooling costs, moderate in the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas we plan on continuing our commitment for managing our trees here in Washington. And whereas we continue to remove damaged trees, plant new trees, and having myself plant an Arbor Day tree. Now therefore, I, Gary W. Menier, Mayor of the City of Washington, Illinois, do hereby proclaim April 25th, 2025 as Arbor Day in the City of Washington, and urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and support the efforts to protect our trees and our woodlands. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Stevens' motion.
Second.
Second by Mr. Martin. Any questions or comments? Please cast your vote. And motion carries 7-0. Now it's time for audience comments. Anyone care to address the council may do so at this time. At this time, if we could review the agenda, that would be deletions or additions for discussion items only. On to item 8, consent agenda is A, B, C, and D this evening.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Adams, motion.
Second.
Second by Ms. Smith. Any questions or comments? Please cast your vote. And motion carries 7-0. I have nothing further this evening, and this time, City Administrator communication, staff reports, requested actions. Mr. Dennis Carr.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item we have this evening is the council report from Friday. Are there any questions or comments regarding the council report?
Sorry. I was just wondering if there's any updates on the Candlewood Bridge.
Yeah, so the Candlewood Bridge is still finalizing design. We're waiting for IDOT's approval. Once we get that, it will go out for bid. I'm guessing We'll probably have construction in that early summer range once we get out of kind of the wet spring season. Spring's not really a good time to construct bridges, so CMT will get that updated and we'll get it out for bid, and hopefully we'll have something going here in early summer. If there's nothing else, the next item on the agenda is the CMT water rate study. We had contracted CMT to do a capital improvement plan for our water system. They had brought several projects forward to a previous committee of the whole event. We had discussed those. We had kind of prioritized them as city staff, and then given CMT direction to move forward with Raftellus to do a water rate study. Water rate studies are something that the IEPA has kind of put in our review that we need to do from time to time, not just capital projects, but also looking at operations. And so it is good that we have this in front of us. So Abby Mueller and Scott Desplin are here with CMT, and then Mr. Collins is here with Raftellus to, Mr. Tom. So I'll hand it over to Abby at this time to begin to look at that.
Dennis, do you have the PowerPoint? Are you going to put it up?
That would have been great to have. I'll send it over to Jeremy here shortly. That'd be great. I just have to reply now. I should be heading over to you now.
Oh, excellent, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to reiterate a lot of what Dennis said and then turn it over to Tom at Raftellus. But we are happy to be back with you guys to continue the discussion that we made on November 11th, your city council meeting, about your potable water system and its improvements. As just a short recap of that council meeting that we made the presentation, CMT evaluated your current water system with help from your planning reports, capital improvement plans, IEPA evaluations, and most importantly, through thorough discussions with city staff members. And then we took that data, and we developed a list of the recommended improvements to be undertaken in the near future. With further help from city staff and from city council members, we were able to prioritize that list and identify potential funding sources for each project. From there, CMT and the city partnered with Raftellus to conduct that water rate study, which he'll discuss further. And a final project planning report will be submitted to the IEPA this month to begin the application for the state revolving fund loan. If you could flip to the next slide, please. So this slide, you'll see a list of an overview of the projects that we mentioned last council meeting, along with their anticipated construction start dates, along with an estimate of their total project costs. Most noticeably, you'll see the first three projects, the water tower number 3, well number 13, and Route 24 water main. These all three we have slated at the moment to be paid for using that IEPA state revolving fund. With that, I will turn it over to Tom with Fratellis to begin the water rate study discussion.
Thank you, Abby. Next slide, please. Next slide. So just to give you a little overview of the rate study process, basically there's two key steps. There's first developing the financial plan, and I'll talk a little bit about the financial plan we developed for the city. But in the end, the financial plan indicates to us how much additional revenue we need over what we would generate with the existing rates. And then the second step is what we call rate design. And this is where we take a look at the rates that are currently being charged and do they meet the objectives of the city. In other words, if we identify that we need a 5% increase in revenue, do we just raise everything 5% and call it a day, or are there tweaks to the rate structure we need to make? Which in this case, we are recommending some tweaks I'll talk about in a minute. Next slide, please. So for the financial plan for the city, we're looking at a time frame of 2025, year we're currently in, through 2032. And this will get, those projects Abby was talking about. Basically, this will fund all those projects and provide full funding for the capital improvements, as well as system rehabilitation and replacement. Over that time frame, we project revenues that the city will generate, revenues under existing rates, and then any proposed rate increases. We project operating costs. Are there going to be changes in their operating costs, as well as we incorporate things like increases in employee salary, increases in insurance costs, and those types of cost increases. And then we have a capital financing plan, and Abby talked a little bit about this, that we're going to use IEPA loans for the large projects, and then we're looking to use revenue, cash fund, some of the smaller and regular replacements. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about the revenue adjustments necessary and how that provides for the financial sustainability of the water utility. Next slide, please. So just to give you an overview in case all of you don't have the water rates memorized, the water rates here have three key pieces. There's what's called the infrastructure fee, and that's $17.46 per month for each customer. Then there's the technology fee, $385 if you have 1 meter and $550 if you have an irrigation meter as well as your domestic meter. And this was put in place to pay for upgrades that were done several years ago, and then there's future upgrades plan that will continue this fee at the same level when we finish paying off what this initial technology fee paid for. And finally, there's a volume charge of $5.47 per 1,000 gallons. So each customer, whatever their metered usage is, they pay $5.47 per 1,000 gallons for it. So it's pretty straightforward rate structure, and we'll talk a little bit more about some tweaks we're recommending here in a minute. Also important to mention, senior residents receive a discount as well as low-income residents, and there's a process, obviously, that they go through to receive that discount. Next slide, please. So one feature that was actually implemented last time, we did a rate study for the city several years ago, and at that time, the council said, hey, we'd really like to just kind of have automatic inflation-based increases, which is something we're seeing more and more utilities do because they recognize that utilities face the same inflationary pressures as every other business. We have to keep paying our employees more, our electricity costs go up, our truck, the cost of buying a truck goes up, everything keeps going up. So, sometimes there's an expectation, why do utility rates need to increase? Well, the reality is that as a utility, we face the same inflationary pressures as everybody else. In fact, it's probably a little worse because, as I'm sure, those of you who have been on the city council for a while now, the cost of capital projects has been increasing even more quickly than typical inflation for many years. And we see this, there's a construction cost index where we've seen that the rate of inflation of capital projects has exceeded what most people consider inflation for many years. And so we actually recommended that there's actually a component of the CPI that relates specifically to water, sewer, and trash, and that's what you implemented in your city ordinances, that each year water rates will go up 2.5%, or the water, sewer, trash CPI, whichever is greater. And so that's what's been going on for the past several years since that was implemented. Recently, the past couple of years, that's been about 5% a year. Longer run, it's been closer to 4% a year increase that metric sees. Joni actually just reached out to me last week and told me she looked at what it would be based on the water trash sewer CPI, and it would be 5.2% if we just went strictly on that metric. But we are recommending a slightly different increase for the first year, which we'll talk about in a minute. Next slide, please. These are the projects that Abby talked about: Well 13 and Water Tower 3, Route 24 water main relocation, which will be debt financed. And then in addition to that, we have some more general rehabilitation projects, just renewal of the system that, we should be doing every year to ensure safe and reliable water service to our citizens. Ongoing water main repairs, approximately $550,000 per year, and then ongoing treatment plant maintenance of approximately $100,000 per year. And actually in the financial plan, these increase just with inflation over time. So these are current year dollars, and in 5 years, it's a little more than $550,000 and $100,000 that's reflected in the financial plan. So if we just went with the water sewer trash CPI, the increase would be 5.2%. However, based on the financial plan we developed to fully fund all of the capital projects that have been identified, what we identified is we would need a little greater increase just in the first year. So instead of the 5.2, we're asking for a 9% increase for the base infrastructure fee as well as the volume charge. The technology fee stays what it is because those costs have already been established, and that's really repaying a loan. Those costs are not increasing. However, we are also recommending to generate the additional revenue necessary to fund the capital improvements that we look at the infrastructure charge, the fixed charge. And as I said, that's a fixed amount right now for every customer in the city. So every single family residence pays the same as a grocery store pays the same as the largest commercial customer we have. And quite frankly, when it comes to a fixed charge like that, especially one that's for infrastructure, what we typically recommend is that it reflects the potential demand those customers place on the system. Obviously, we've built a lot more capacity in the system to serve a large commercial customer than we have a single family home. And so this is a common approach, is that the fixed charge increases for larger meters to reflect the capacity that we've built in the system to be able to serve those larger customers. It doesn't necessarily make sense that our largest commercial customer pays the same $17 per month infrastructure fee as our smallest residential customer. Next slide, please. So overall, you can see this is what the proposed infrastructure fee would look like. For a 5/8 and 3/4 inch meter, which are typical residential customers, they would see a 9% increase in that fee. Larger meter sizes would see a greater increase, and there's a calculation behind this that basically reflects the potential demand of those larger meters that they can place on our system based on the capacity of a larger meter. And so by doing this, we generate approximately a 2.5% revenue increase in the first year by doing this. So in other words, if we didn't do this, we would have to raise everybody's rates by approximately 2.5%. And so instead, this pushes the 2.5% increase onto these larger customers to reflect the larger potential demand of their larger meters on the system. Next slide, please. The volume charge we're recommending increased by the 9% we talked about, and then the technology fee will stay the same because, again, those costs are already set, and it's really repayment of a loan that's already been set. So overall, when we look at the bill impact, and this is what we would call a typical residential customer, and we know every residential, some people use less, some people use more, but this is kind of what the median looks like in the city for a residential customer, is about 4,000 gallons per month. So you can see the current rates, they pay about $43.19 right now for 4,000 gallons a month. Under the proposed rates, it would be $46.77. So I mentioned to you that kind of the headline that we're using is 9%, but it's really a little bit lower than that for the typical residential customer since we're not increasing the technology charge. And so that kind of brings it down just a little bit. So overall, it's about $350. Well, I shouldn't say about. It's $358 per month for this typical customer who's using 4,000 gallons. And this is a comparison to some of the communities in our region. And you can see, Washington right now, we're kind of in the middle here, higher than if, pretty much of the 7 communities, the 6 other communities were smack dab in the middle, and this would push us up just a little bit. We'd literally be 2 cents more than a Bloomington customer using 4,000 gallons a month. So for all practical purposes, about the same as them. But this is kind of that impact. Again, $385 per month works out to this amount. And I think that's my last slide. So that's the end of my prepared presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of the council members or mayor have.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Stevens?
I did have a question about the prices in the study, but I shared them with Dennis. It's not, there's no purpose in discussing it here, but he knows the questions that I have about that.
Okay, you mean the other communities? Or,
That too, I didn't bring that up to him, but I noticed your presentation, 5 years ago?
yeah, I want to say it was a little over 5 years ago because I believe it was before COVID, as I
Okay.
recall.
The comparison with other communities, it's not the same chart. You didn't use all of the same communities, and that concerned me too, but that's, I guess, neither here nor
Okay.
there. And also on this comparison to other communities, the Illinois American Water customers, like, there's no price on here how much they pay. Does that make a difference?
So the Illinois American, I actually, if you go to the next slide, I think I actually have a slide. We were trying to, not that we were hiding this, but we weren't sure this was going to come up. So those of you may be familiar with the Illinois American. We charge Illinois American our retail rate for water, which is probably, when you talk about a wholesale customer, that's typically the best you could probably hope for, is that they're going to pay the same as a retail customer that we're providing retail service to. Because we're selling them a large quantity of water off our transmission system, we don't have to deal with local distribution costs and other things. So we are charging them a retail rate. Also, that the change that we're recommending, the infrastructure fee, they have 1 6-inch meter, 6-inch? Dennis, or yeah, they have 1 6-inch meter now, and they're planning on adding a second 6-inch meter. So that will actually get more revenue out of an Illinois American too. So, of course, Illinois American's an investor-owned utility, and we often avoid comparing ourselves to an investor-owned utility, but we were using other municipally owned utilities as the point of comparison. But obviously, if Illinois American Water is paying us the same as our customers pay, and then they have to mark it up to make their rate of return and their profit and pay for their, we can expect that Illinois American customers are going to be paying more than what our customers pay.
And what is Beck's meter size? I'm sorry, I caught you off guard, but that could be a question answered later. But I was just
Okay.
curious.
Is that the convenience store? Isn't there a convenience
Oh,
store
it's the
called Beck's?
famous chicken tender store.
Oh, I
The
should have
thing
gone
that
there
we
for
feed
dinner.
them, we don't give their gas station water. We give their car wash water. But I can.
I'm sorry,
I might be
that's
able
right.
to pull that up real quick. Tom, that price you have for Peoria, is that Illinois American?
I'd have to go. Joe Collins did that for me. I'll be honest, my consultant did that for me, and I'm not sure
Yeah.
off the top of my head.
Yeah, Scott shaking his head yes. I was assuming
Okay.
it was. So they're paying $10 more a month
Yeah.
for just the water, but we also have to remember that their sewer is also quite a bit higher than ours as well. I'm not going to be able to look up Bex. My email doesn't go that far back on my laptop.
To put a bow on the Illinois American, because that was a big point of discussion we actually had, is by bringing Illinois American on, basically, if we hadn't done that, we would be asking you for a 16% rate increase instead of a 9% rate increase. But that's how much additional revenue that we're generating from Illinois American that really helps our citizens and our customers.
Mayor.
Mr. Martin?
So for the 6-inch, the 705, that's per month, right?
Yes.
And that, do you know how many 6 inches we have in this city?
It's not many. A lot of the commercial, and I don't know the exact breakdown, I've seen it, but I don't have it memorized. But there's a lot of commercial customers in the 1-2 inch range. Even those customers, though, if a commercial customer has a 2-inch meter, they should obviously have a demand. One, we don't want people having large meters without a reason, because that's actually bad for the system. And two, if they have a 2-inch meter, they can literally, I forget, off the top of my head, I want to say they have 8 times the capacity as a 3/4 inch meter. And so that's what that increase recognizes, is the additional capacity that our system can provide that customer who has the larger meter.
So, but you don't know ballpark of like how many over 4 inches there are?
It's a couple dozen.
Okay, thank you.
It's not many. It's more in that 1 to 3 inch range that you'll see most of the commercial customers. It takes, a 3-inch meter can provide you a lot of water.
So the one thing that I would add is, so their capital program right now shows essentially us getting approved for the state revolving loan, essentially our first go around here. That doesn't necessarily mean it would happen. But the bigger portion of the capital improvement here is the Route 24 water main. So at the moment, we're still trying to talk with IDOT about allowing that water main to be included in that construction project. We would have to pay it, but it would be cheaper to do it that route, but it would also remove it from allowing it to be an IEPA loan. So that's why we have it as a general obligated bond. In this is because we are under the assumption here that IDOT is going to allow us put the construction inside that reconstruction plans itself. But that is where a majority of this rate study funding is going to, is to pay for that water main for that project.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. McIntyre.
sorry, I had one question. We have kind of timelines on this, and, excuse me, we're talking about, a time frame from 2025 to 2032. Are we assuming that we are going to accomplish like that southeast area water main improvement by 2032? Is that kind of the goal, or is this kind of just like long-term visioning?
So when we were having our conversations, I wanted to make sure that we were setting ourselves up in 2032 to be not dead red, because that is when the southeast water main is going to pick up. But we are kind of doing that right now. So the Catherine Street water main is part of that south. So it's that general item that we have in capital is us continuing those road projects like we have been the last handful of years.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I know that area, it's a lot of 4-inch and stuff like that, so we're gonna have to be improving it regardless, and that's been there for a long time, so it's just a reality of having almost a 200-year-old city, or really a 200-year-old city that's part of the infrastructure.
Are there any other questions?
Yes,
Tom
please.
was here.
So with this, what I want to say, the difference between the 6-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch, how does that stack up to other cities? Is that pretty normal?
Yes. Yes, it is. You can go to most other communities and they will have larger fixed charges for larger meter sizes. Like I said, it really comes down to, actually I have another client, they're outside Chicago, and we recently did a study for them, and they charged $5 every 2 months or $5 every month. It was just a $5 flat fee for every bill, and we literally did the same thing. We're like, no, we need to, it needs to be $5 per month, and if you get a bill every 2 months, then it should be $10. And then for the larger meters, we did the same thing, but it's much more common that those types of fixed charges, when you're looking at a 1726 fixed charge, which is what yours is now, clearly that's not just the cost of meter reading, billing, and collection. It doesn't cost you guys $17 to go out there, read the meter, collect the money, send the bill. And so it includes, and it's called the infrastructure fee, which to me clearly indicates what its intention is. And as I said, the important issue is when you have somebody with a larger meter, they have more water storage capacity, we have to build larger lines, we have more pumping capacity, more well capacity for those customers with a larger meter. So I would say, one, it's very common, more common than not, that it increases by meter size. And really, I think it better accomplishes what the name of the fee indicates it's for, which is to pay for infrastructure. And a larger meter, there is more infrastructure in our system backing up that larger meter, regardless of whether they use it or not. Because that's one of the things. If everybody used water in proportion to their meter size, you kind of wouldn't need it, because then a 6-inch meter would use 500 times more water than a 3/4-inch meter. But the problem is sometimes people don't use all the capacity that we've really kind of set aside for them based on their meter size. And that's what this accomplishes.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Stevens?
how you explained that was very clear, the infrastructure fee, but on our bills, it states fixed fee. And a lot of people are confused about that. What is a fixed fee?
Sure.
So I suggest that we change it to infrastructure fee to make it clear, as you said.
Yeah, and yeah, I'll be the first to tell you that many bills are, you know, and I'll admit I'm not sure I've looked at one of your bills, but that's always something that's often something that can be improved upon, is how we even communicate, you know, our customers' water bills to them, because a lot of utilities don't do a great job of doing it, honestly. But like I said, you know, the information we have is that it is the infrastructure fee is I believe that's what it is called in the ordinance. And if that's not reflected on the bill, then maybe we can just make that fix easily.
I think it might be a question of spacing, because there's not
right.
a whole lot of space, but we could probably
Sure.
like abbreviate it maybe.
Yeah, just INFR, and then at
INF,
least if people asked, yeah. Because fixed fee can imply one thing, but in the end, at the end of the day, I wrote a whole chapter on this actually in a book. You know, the fixed fee should reflect readiness to serve, which varies by meter size. A larger customer has a largest readiness to serve component. Now, if it were only $5, then one could make the argument, well, it's really only for meter reading, billing, and collection. But with ours at $17, clearly there's some truly infrastructure in that fee. And in that case, our recommendation is larger meters should have a larger share of the infrastructure cost.
I found our water meter sizes. We have two 6-inch. I'm pretty confident that is going to be both of Illinois Americans. We have 4 4-inch meters, 7 3-inch meters, 35 2-inch meters, 14 1.5, 52 1, and then everybody else is a residential meter.
Thanks, Dennis. Like I said, doing it avoids a 2.5% increase that, you know, otherwise we would be asking you for, instead of a 11.5% increase to kind of get to the same point that the financial plan gets to.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Stevens?
will we be discussing this at the committee of the whole meeting?
We can draft an ordinance and have it on the committee of the whole. We can continue discussing now. Whatever council would like to do at this time.
I personally would like to discuss it at the committee of the whole meeting, because it's a city council meeting and we have a whole lot of other stuff.
We can draft an ordinance and have it on next Monday's meeting to have further discussion on.
It'll be for discussion only, though.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep,
Sounds
that's no
good.
problem. Are there any other questions at this time regarding Ref Tellis and CMT's presentation? If not, we can move on to the next item. This is the discussion on the Public Works Storage Building. I'll send that over to Brian.
Thank you, Dennis. This is kind of just a discussion / update on Public Works Storage / Evidence Building. The contractor and our insurance have been working because they felt there was more repairs that needed than what they originally thought. I believe we received 110 or so, Joni, in the first go-around, but after working with Hare, the insurance agreed to that there's about $340,000 worth of repair cost. To date, we've received about 304, with 36,000 remaining upon completion of the project. So I just kind of wanted to see what council's thoughts are. I know we talked about completing the repairs, and I believe that was a consensus back in August. Another option we had kind of looked at, and I've talked internally with staff, is doing the repairs, but seeing how much it might cost to raise the building a little bit. Some of our equipment, I've been told possibly the new street sweeper might be a little too tall for that building. So the thought of getting a quote possibly to see how much, if they could raise it 8 inches or 16, get a quote for that. That might be worth doing while they're repairing the roof. And again, we could also demolish, build new. I don't know if council's wish would be to demolish and build a parking lot. But those are basically discussion items that maybe get direction from council. We did budget $500,000 for this year, depending on what council's wishes are. Again, with receiving $304,000 with 36 delivery after repairs.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Brownfield.
will this get everything under roof if we raise it the 12 inches?
I'd say no. We still got a lot of other equipment, but it'd get a lot.
Everything that's left out for the street department would be in, probably?
With the buildings, I believe that would get about everything under roof.
Okay.
Raising the structure, we're looking at also the new plow trucks that are coming in. Is that correct? Hopefully they could fit in those as well.
Yeah, so currently the Western Stars that we've received, the next go around, we'd be looking for 2. I believe this is in fiscal year 29-30 or around then. But they are longer and taller. So one side of the street department, once it's full, the other side, it's a smaller building, so they wouldn't be able to fit in there. The thought would be that maybe 1 or 2 could go up to the Jefferson shop.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. McIntyre.
I guess you're looking for input. From my opinion, you know, we're getting $340,000 from insurance. The building currently doesn't suit the needs from what I'm hearing from you and just the future needs of the city in reality with the larger equipment, larger trucks. You know, the idea of not having a building immediately to store our stuff is a concern to me, but I think I'd much rather see us, my opinion is get pricing for what demolition would be so we could look for building a new building that would actually suit the needs of, for the street department and for you guys. It's just my opinion. Again, we sustain this damage. The building really at this point has kind of been, you know, we put mowers in there, we got snow plow, you know, plows that we put away. But to me, if we're looking long-term, we need to really consider, you know, kind of a blessing in disguise is, you know, we have this opportunity, and I don't know what demolition costs. If it's gonna cost $300,000 to demo it, and then we don't have enough to build a new building, then I say let's look at different alternatives. But if the building's not large enough and raising it, to me, that's just putting a Band-Aid on something. So I would personally like to see a price on what it would be to demo it, so that we can make it something that's gonna be suitable for us long-term. Because you know as well as I do, equipment's not getting smaller. And, you know, I would like to see all of our stuff, you know, where Public Works can all get together and the equipment's in the same place and we could figure out something for a long-term plan, but that's just my 2 cents.
And something to keep in mind is some of the talks we've had on the future of Public Works. If we have a bigger facility that can house the street department and the distribution and collections, I know we've been setting aside money each year for something in the future. So that is something to keep in mind. You know, building new here will help short term, but in the long term, if the goal of council is to bring the 2 departments together in a bigger facility that can house everybody, plus look into the future, It's just something to keep in mind.
Mayor,
Ms. Smith?
I would be in favor of looking into raising the roof a little and just keeping the building.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Stevens?
I believe it was said that the council, there was a consensus to completing repairs back in August. And you also have talked about the facilities plan and like in the future, having everything under one roof. Again, I would like to talk more about this at the committee of the whole, unless we stick with the consensus of completing the repairs. Because number one, like, I have no idea how many vehicles we have. I don't know how many taller vehicles are kept outside. This should all be taken into consideration. So again, I really like your looking ahead in the future. I like the plan that we had talked about earlier. So my opinion would be completing the repairs as the consensus of the council stated back in August, and or talking more about it at the next committee of the whole meeting.
No, we can do this, and again, some of this was just to bring back to council that the original was around 130,000 worth, and we had received 110. Basically working with a new contractor, and the insurance, the repairs were estimated to be at 340,000, so I wanted to bring that back to council, and then again, just, we can talk about this stuff. We don't have to make a decision tonight, but it's something to think on what to do.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Martin?
I agree. We should fix what we were going to say we were going to fix, but I do want to know what that price is on raising the roof.
Okay.
We should definitely look into that and know. Thank you.
I have reached out to them. I didn't get a reply back yet Friday, so I wasn't able to put anything in, but I'll reach out to them tomorrow and see if they got anything.
If there's no other discussion, we can move on to the next item, which is a purchase authorization approval for the water treatment plant number 1, chlorine SCADA integration. Back to Brian again.
Thank you. Again, SCADA is what we use to operate all our facilities. It allows us, the plants to operate while we're not there. We were going through the water treatment plant 1 chlorine upgrades. So we want to get the SCADA tied into the new alarms and the operation. So we have proposed in the budget fiscal year 25-26, 60,000. I believe the quote was around 52, so I'm just asking for the 60 in case there's unforeseen stuff. But it is something we need to do in order to continue to operate Plant 1 with the new improvements.
Well, I motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Please cast your vote. And motion carries 7-0.
We have 3 resolutions on the agenda this evening. The first of which is a policy that sets forth a suspension and disbarment policy and procedures as required by 2 CFR Part 200 Uniform Administrative Requirements, Cost Principles and Audit Requirements for Federal Records, and by title, Approved Suspension and Disbarment Policy.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Brown. Mr. Brownfield, motion.
Second.
Second by Mr. Adams. Any questions, comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Stevens?
So really, what does this actually say?
This is a requirement by the Department of Justice that, with the evidence building grant, this is something they've asked for. And it will be incorporated into our procurement policy, which should come on the 21st, but they did want it kind of right away, so I went ahead and put this together. Basically, all it's saying is that before, and this has to do with federal funds, so before we move forward with awarding a contract that has federal funds involved, we need to make sure that we go through the process to determine that there's no suspension or disbarment of that particular contractor. And the way that you do it is just you go on the sam.gov website. So I showed kind of a sample of that attached. And you just go into the sam.gov, you look up that contractor, and you make sure there's no exclusions. In addition to that, we are also putting in the policy to make sure they're in good standing with the state of Illinois.
This is during the bidding process, right?
This would be prior to awarding a contract, so, yes.
So does this go along with that responsible bidding ordinance that some of us wanted? It kind of goes along with this, right?
Kind of, but this is not the responsible.
Exactly,
Yes,
exactly, but it's
yes.
making sure
That
that.
will be a part of the
Yeah.
procurement policy.
Yeah, I think that's great, thanks.
Yeah. Mhm.
Anyone else? Have a motion and a second? Cast your vote. And motion carries 7-0.
The next resolution will approve an agreement between the City of Washington and the Washington Chamber of Commerce regarding business promotion, tourism, and economic development services for a 2-year period ending on April 30th, 2027. Among other things, the agreement provides for the payment of $35,000 to the Washington Chamber of Commerce in FY 25-26 and FY 26-27, as well as $10,000 during FY 25-26 as reimbursement for expenses associated with the Chamber's involvement the planning and coordination of the Washington Bicentennial Celebration. By title, approve Washington Chamber of Commerce Work Agreement.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Ms. Stevens' motion, who was second by? Huh? Ms. Smith's second? Or was that the motion? You made the motion? Ms. Stevens and the second by Ms. Smith, okay. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0.
The last resolution this evening would approve an agreement with Discover Peoria regarding tourism development, promotion, and recruitment services for a 1-year period ending on April 30th, 2026. By title, approve Discover Peoria agreement.
Motion to approve.
Mr. McIntyre, motion.
Second.
Second by Ms. Smith. Any questions or comments? Cast your vote. And motion carries 7-0.
We have 3 first readings this evening, the first of which, the adoption of this ordinance would approve the transfer and reallocation of volume cap in connection with private activity bond issues and related matters. By title, approve the 2025 First-Time Home Buyers Program. The second first reading this evening is an ordinance that would adopt a budget for corporate purposes for the fiscal year beginning May 1, 2025 and ending April 30th, 2026, and approving certain amendments to the FY 2025 budget. By title, approval of the annual budget for FY 2025 and 2026. The last first reading this evening would be an ordinance that would vacate a portion of Harding Street right-of-way located in Hartman's Re-Subdivision and Highland Park Addition in the city of Washington, Tazewell County, Illinois. By title, approve Harding Street right-of-way vacation. We have 1 second reading this evening, the adoption of which this ordinance would adjust the number of video gaming terminal permanent stickers to 72 and the number of allowable licenses established to 12 within the city of Washington. By title, the approve amendment allowing increase in video gaming establishments and terminals.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Adams' motion.
Second.
Second by Ms. Smith. Any questions, comments? Cast your vote. And motion carries 7-0.
That is all the business we have this evening.
Okay. Thanks, Dennis. At this time, any older persons wishing to be heard? On to item.
Mayor, I'm sorry.
Mr. Martin.
I just have a question. I know we had talked about several times of having or getting the ball rolling of a city administrator. So during our next transition that we're ready to go. Have we done anything with that? Is there any plans for that?
No, we're waited on the election. There was no reason anybody would apply with an election coming, so that hopefully will be the first council order of business for the next council if that's what they choose. Anyone else?
Well, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Martin.
So what about us deciding to have an interim for city administrator until that can get going? Because didn't we hear that that's going to take several months?
But again, I mean, with an election just occurring, 2 meetings left before the next council is seated, I think that's probably going to have to be the next council would make that decision. Anyone else? Item 15, executive session for 5 ILCS 120/2C6, the purchase or lease of real. I'm going to let the city attorney, because the language needs to be exact.
Yeah, there's a Scrivener's note, the section in the agenda, it should be C6, which is the setting of a price for the sale or lease of property owned by the public body, instead of C5.
Including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired, and 5 ILCS 120/2C1 to consider the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body. And with that, I would entertain a motion. Mr. Butler, motion.
Second.
Who's second? Mr. McIntyre. And if they would, we'll ask for a vote to go into executive session. And 7-0, and there is no action coming out of executive session. And we'll start here in a few minutes. Thank you.
Jeremy, is there a way to pause it, or do you have to completely shut it off during this? Just because we'll want it to be recording when we come back.
Entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Martin, motion. Second by Mr. Butler. All those in favor, say by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Meeting is adjourned.
So someone from staff want a meeting now?
Why?